One of the most important skills of a dispatcher is the ability to make people feel comfortable and to build lasting business relationships. In any course, online training, and even dispatcher training in transportation companies, all dispatchers are trained to work with load boards and negotiate with brokers. And of course, without these skills, the dispatcher can never become a true professional. However, having taken many dispatching courses, having attended many seminars, and having talked to hundreds of transportation company owners, I very rarely hear anyone seriously consider training dispatchers to build business relationships with brokers, especially in the early stages of their career. It's sort of taken for granted that a dispatcher, after gaining experience and working for a while, will naturally build up contacts, set up relationships, and take loads directly from brokers, without relying on a load board. I fundamentally disagree with this approach. If you and I have already started down this road, we'll plan for your career growth right away and build the right habits that will bear fruit months or even years from now. In the past year at my company, we've been very tightly focused on process improvement. We started counting the numbers and crunching the statistics on a lot of operational aspects to find the best practices and to improve. So, statistics shows that dispatchers with more than 2 years of experience spend on average 45% less time searching for loads than dispatchers with less than 3 months of experience. Most interestingly, dispatchers with more than 2 years experience spend 42% less time on the load boards than dispatchers with less than 3 months experience. Why does this happen, and how do experienced dispatchers do it? I think you already guessed. They take loads directly through their contacts. Yes, experienced dispatchers have well-established customers that they've been working with for a long time, and they know perfectly well what loads and what areas would work for them. But if they also kept looking for every load on the load board, they'd still spend a lot of time searching. And so let's break down what you, a beginner dispatcher, can do to get up to the level of professionals with 2 years of experience as quickly as possible, make your life easier, speed up your work, and start earning even more. This series of simple tools should be applied from the first day of work, and after a couple of months they will generate results. First, keep a list of brokers. That sounds trivial, and unfortunately I don't have any worldwide statistics, but I'm sure that over 50% of dispatchers do not keep a separate document, at least with contacts, the name and number of every broker they worked with. And that's a mistake. As I said before, for the first couple of months of my career, I worked with carriers who only operated in the state of Florida. This focus on one state quickly made me realize that I was talking to the same people time and time again. I started out simple, writing down the name and direct line or extension of each person I took a load from. Then I realized that each broker was usually responsible for their individual zone, lane, or individual customer who needed to move the same load in the same direction every now and then. I started writing down the zones and loads that each broker usually had. For example, I had a broker, Dave, who was in constant need of reefers during the season to haul watermelons and melons from Jacksonville to Orlando. Also, I was in touch with a girl named Cindy. Her client needed frozen produce hauled year-round from the town of Winter Haven, just outside of Orlando. Cindy and Dave worked for the same brokerage firm, but when I called Dave and asked him for a shipment from Winter Haven, I would get nothing. It turned out that Dave didn't even know Cindy existed, much less who her clients were or what loads she had, because they were working in different office locations. Fortunately, I learned that lesson very early on, and it helped my career tremendously, keeping a list of brokers. I'm not going to give you any template for this list, just do it in any form that's convenient for you, but be sure to keep a document. I recommend that you put as much information as you can. The broker's name, the broker's company name, a personal phone number or extension, a list of all your carriers, if you have multiple who already have a setup with this broker, the areas where the broker has the most loads, and a list of the loads you've already taken from this broker. Second point, be respectful and friendly. Another tip that may seem too obvious, but in practice it's not used by everyone. People want to work and communicate with those who they like on a personal level. Personal relationships often play a role in choosing a carrier for a shipment. As a broker, who would you rather give a load to? A dispatcher you've been working with for a long time, or a dispatcher who called you for the first time, didn't even say hello, and asked for information about the load? Well, the correct answer is the one who offers a lower price, but still. personal relationships do play a role. And what better way to build them in a work environment than just to be respectful, pleasant, and friendly. Next point. Add brokers to your phone book and call them by name when they call. Dale Carnegie said that a person's name is the sweetest and most important sound to them in any language. So here's what I do. I make sure I write down every new contact in my phone book, and when I get a call from them, I pick up the phone and call their name right away. I say, "Hey Dave, how are you doing today?" Or, "Hey Cynthia, how can I help you?" This trick works far better than you can imagine. After the first call that started like this, they perceive me as a friend, or at least as a friendly colleague. And the next time I call the broker, I will surely hear the words "Hi Dimitri" instead of the usual cold, nameless greeting. And this already opens the door to a closer, more mutually beneficial communication. Next, don't be afraid to be pushy in providing information when a load is in transit. Brokers love dispatchers who actively communicate during the shipment. I can say this with confidence because I worked as a broker myself and I have my own brokerage company. Chances are the broker's customer is constantly asking him for updates, and he himself would be pleased to receive an email or even a call from you notifying that the truck is going to arrive on time or that the driver has already arrived at the loading point. Even if you provided the broker with GPS tracking, still just send him an email. Just scribble a quick message like "driver is loaded" or "driver arrived at the delivery location." You don't even have to call them. Many dispatchers say they don't send too many updates about a shipment's location, not even because they don't have time, but because they just don't want to be annoying. I don't know what they're afraid of. On the contrary, the more updates, the more you stand out from the crowd. You show your extraordinary level of service. I recommend that you notify your broker of the truck's arrival and departure at every point, plus notify them at least once a day of the truck's location in transit. Next point, send the proof of delivery right away. One of the pains of a broker in dealing with carriers is not getting the POD on time. This document is required of them by the shipper, and the sooner they send it, the more satisfied the shipper is with the broker's service. In some cases, customers can even charge brokers if they don't send the signed BOL, for example, within 24 hours of delivery. Brokers are fighting for clients, and if you help them improve their image, you're in good standing. In order to always get this task done on time, make an agreement in advance with each of your drivers. Just explain them that it's very important to you. You can say that your boss will scold you if it's not done. Even if you're working with a carrier who handles his own invoices and doesn't necessarily need to send you a POD, explain to them that you care about their image of their company and want to build a long-term relationships with the brokers, and you need this document for this purpose. No carrier in their right mind would refuse, because it's beneficial to them as well. Next, thank the broker after the shipment is delivered. I recommend that you prepare a template and send it out to brokers after delivery. Write a few nice words, express your gratitude and your desire to continue working with them. You can also attach the signed bill of lading to the same email. It doesn't cost you anything, but again, you'll stand out from the crowd. For example, you could write something like this. Just, "Hi Dave, the load has been delivered, BOL is attached. Thank you for the load, I appreciate your business. Hoping to continue working with you in the future." The same can be done via phone call. Next point. Find out if the broker has the same loads on a regular basis. This is where we get directly to building a working relationship. Your driver delivered a good load, why not call and see if they have the same loads for the next week, for example. Then, let the broker know about your trucks. For a broker, it's most interesting to build a relationship with someone who has trucks that are in their zones all the time. For example, when I worked as a broker, I used to haul a lot of cilantro, parsley, and other greens from Harrisonburg, Virginia. Every day I would post my loads on a load board, and while I waited for calls, I looked for carriers and dispatchers who were based near that town. I knew that even though they drove all over the country, sooner or later their trucks would come home and they would need a load from my area. That's what almost every broker does. When talking to a broker, tell him about your trucks. Where they're based, what zones they move in most often, what loads you need on a regular basis. This will help you find common ground and determine if you can be useful to each other. Even if your carrier zones don't overlap too much with the areas where the broker has the most frequent shipments, he will certainly add your information to his list and keep you in mind if he has something new. And finally, ask your brokers for lists of loads. I get dozens of emails every day to my work email with load lists from various brokers. For some of them, it's just a way to find as many carriers as possible. Just like the big broker companies have their own websites with load boards, the smaller companies just send out daily or weekly emails with loads to all their contacts. At times, such lists may be sent only to the most trusted and closely associated dispatchers. It's kind of like a VIP club. If you're a member, the broker sends you great loads with good prices. And the most important part is that these loads have not yet hit the public load boards. That's what makes it interesting. That's really worth working on the relationship for. Let me give you an example. One of my dispatchers works with a pretty large carrier who has 12 trucks with reefer trailers. One of his broker contacts works with a large farm that needs to haul expensive microgreen sprouts year-round. Twice a week, the dispatcher receives a list from the broker with dozens, if not hundreds, of high-paying loads from that farm. In addition to him, a couple of other dispatchers get this list, and they divide these loads among themselves depending on the availability of the trucks they have in the right area. The dispatcher specifically selects routes for these loads and therefore loads at least 50% of his trucks with just this one contact. It takes him almost no time. He's almost always the first to go home from the office, and he almost single-handedly loads 12 trucks. There you go. Unfortunately, there's no single secret methods on how to get the brokers to like you or how to get the best high-paying loads from them before they post it on the load boards. Contacts simply take time to build. You'll probably change jobs or sign new carrier more than once. You'll find your brokers and your optimal routes for each truck you dispatch. The only effective way is to always use the tools I've described today. Before you know it, for every type of equipment, every state, every season, you'll have people who you can talk to and who will provide loads for you. This concludes the module on finding loads. Go on to your homework and we'll meet in the next module where we'll talk about the most common problems that arise in the work of a dispatcher and how to solve them.